Hello, it is Baga, and I am going to read for you The Selfish Giant. You should get your copy in the mail shortly or already have it. But this is Lucy Jane. This was her favorite book when she came to visit. So we're going to read The Selfish Giant. Here we go. The Selfish Giant. And your version might look a little bit different than mine, but that's okay. You can look at my pictures and then look at your pictures also. Okay, so there's the picture. Every afternoon, as they were coming home from school, the children used to go to play in the giant's garden. It was a very lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into delicious blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. "How happy we are here," they cried to each other. There they are. Ooh, there comes the selfish giant. And there's a placard right here that says trespassers will be prosecuted. One day, the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish orc, and had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, he had said all that he needed to say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing there?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that. And I will allow no one to play in it but myself." So he built a high wall all around it and put up a notice board that said, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He was a very selfish giant. There he is. And there's all the children leaving the garden to play. They didn't get to play in the garden anymore. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander round the high wall when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden. Inside, "How happy we were there," they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there was little blossoms and the little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. The birds had not care to sing in it, as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower poked up its head out of the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground and went off to sleep. Ooh, look at all the people. Yeah. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. "Spring has forgotten this garden," they cried. "So we will live here all year round." The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. Ooh, the frost. Where's he painting? Oh, he's painting all the trees silver. They invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he roared all day long about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. "This is a delightful spot," he said. "We must ask Hale for a visit." There he is. He's yelling all over. Oh. And there's Hale. So Hale came every day for 3 hours. He rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates. And then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could go. And he was dressed in gray, and his breath was like ice. "I cannot understand why spring is so late in coming," said the selfish giant. There he is. He's sticking his head out of the out of the wall, and he can't understand why the spring hasn't come. I hope we will have a change in weather soon, he said. But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but in the garden of the selfish giant he gave none. He is too selfish, she said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow danced about through the trees. There's the selfish giant. Look at him. There he's sitting on his bed. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird sing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in all the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped up out of bed and looked out, and what did he see? Here's the casement. They call it that. A casement is a window. And he looked out the window. What did he see? Looked out the casement. What did he see? Oh, all of the children. Look at that. He saw the most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. In every tree that he could see, there was a little child, and the trees were glad to have the children back again, and they were covering themselves in blossoms and were waving their arms gently about the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. Oh, look at that. What happened? Where was it still winter? Oh, look at that. And look at that nasty hail is tormenting the little boy. In the farthest corner of the garden, and it was the farthest corner of the garden, and it was standing, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small, and he could not reach up to the branches of the tree. And he was wandering all round it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. "Come up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could, but the boy was too tiny. And the giant's heart melted as he looked out. "How selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever." He was really very sorry for all he had done. He was sorry for building the wall so the children couldn't play in the garden. And look at the little children. They're wondering what's going to happen. Okay, let's see. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they ran away, and the garden became once again winter. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he could not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossoms, and the birds came and sang on it, and the little boy stretched out his 2 arms and flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them came the spring. "It is your garden now, little children," said the giant, and he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. They're looking out at the giant, and they're trying to figure out, is he a mean old giant or has he changed? Everyone is given the opportunity to change. We can all change our bad behavior, can't we? And the giant changed. And when the people were going to the market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. "But where is your little companion?" he said. "The boy I put into the tree." The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. "We don't know," answered the children. "He has gone away." "You must tell him to be sure to come here tomorrow," said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived, and they had never seen him before, and the giant felt very sad. The giant felt sad that the little boy wasn't coming to visit. And those are the market people, and they see him playing with his children in the garden. And I think this is the wall that the giant broke down. Do you think that's the wall? Look at how beautiful the garden is. And every afternoon when the school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, and he longed for his little friend and often spoke of him. "How I would love to see him," he used to say. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about any more, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful of all." So he got to sit and watch the children play with their toys. One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep, and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder, and looked and looked. It certainly was a most marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Well, do you remember what doves symbolize in the Bible? The coming of the Holy Spirit, right? So what does he look out, and who does he see? Let's see. Said the giant. Look at him. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden he hastened across the grass and came near to the child. And when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were prints of 2 nails, and on the prints of 2 nails were on his little feet. "Who hath dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me, that I may take my big axe and slay him." Sword and slay him. "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. The little boy was Jesus, didn't he? And he came and he played with he took the selfish giant, because the selfish giant had kissed this selfish giant, and he took him to heaven, to paradise. And there the children, and you see the wall. I think this might be the wall. Oh no, those are their hands. Anyway, and there's the white blossoms. And they miss the selfish giant, didn't they? But they know they might see him again when they get to go to paradise with Jesus too. Okay. There you go. The selfish giant.